You say hi.
Dada poop.
Dada did not poop. Okay.
Did we start filming? Okay.
Yeah.
I already ate half of my meal.
Have you guys ever had a moment where you thought you were alone, but then you realized that you were not alone? So embarrassing story real quick. It was a couple years ago. I was in our kitchen doing dishes, had my earbuds in, and if you know me well, I like to listen to very, let's just say, electric music. So I was in like headbanging, feeling this music, doing dishes, and like there's drool coming out as I'm headbanging. And I came around the corner into our kitchen nook by the living room, and little did I know, but we had some people come over from Craigslist to buy something, like a rug. And so I remember looking up with drool coming out of my face, and there's these two people standing in the living room just staring at me. And I'm like, hey, what's up? You guys, so there's moments in life you think you're alone. You're actually not alone. And so if you feel like you're alone, and if you're a follower of Jesus, if you understand who God is, you're actually not alone. So we're going to talk about loneliness. I want to do a shout out to grades 9 and grades 8. You guys are amazing. It was fun hanging out with you guys last week. Grade 9, you guys have a sweet basketball court. It was fun to play basketball with you guys. Amazing house, amazing leaders. And grade 8, it was fun to be with you guys. I love the house, amazing leaders as well. And it's fun to hang out and see what you guys are doing and how you guys are. So thanks for letting me come in and hang out with you guys. So it was pretty sweet. Let's go into some announcements. You guys, here's some announcements for some pretty cool things coming up.
Hi, I'm Alexis from the leadership team.
I'm Jacob from the leadership team.
Hi, I'm the one that bumped the guitar, and I'm Sabrina from leadership team.
Hey everybody, make sure to come down this Sunday to Solo and Wilso. And don't forget about the donuts, those are really good donuts. And the Devo, and then we dispatch to go serve around the church. Make sure to meet at room 226.
And just so you guys know, there's no youth group next week. Well, it's spring break, so that kind of makes up for it.
I have to get this ready. This Friday at 7 p.m. at Creekside Church, there is going to be a party, an all youth kind of party, as in middle school, high school, 7 p.m. Food, games, worship. Be there.
Thank you guys for making home groups a priority. We love you guys, and this is where real growth happens. So thank you for being with your home tonight. We're going through a series called The One. We want to set you up for a relationship sometime in the future that will be hopefully lead you into marriage if God calls you to marriage. And we hope that that person is your one person for life. And that's our intentions behind this. So disclaimer, nothing we're talking about is about your parents. This is all about you, the student. And we love you guys. We want to make sure that we can give you some tools that will help you as you get ready to get into the dating life in the future and hopefully into marriage. The Bible, so where we left off last week, we talked about the disciples. Also, they weren't quiet anymore. And so Jesus is being talked to by these Pharisees, and the disciples were like, hey, marriage sounds really tough. Wait, we can't just divorce our wife for petty reasons. So maybe it's better to stay single. So we talked about that last week, and actually, yes, sometimes it is better to stay single. They can call it the gift of being single is what it is. And we talked about if you have a burning desire to be in a relationship, we hope that you can move that burning desire to be in a relationship with God and not to always focus on being in a dating or marriage relationship, because being married is amazing. We love it. It's a lot of work. But it's not everything. So I love Mary Lynn so much because I will never be number one. Her focus will always be on God, and I'll be a distant 2 or 3 or 4 somehow down that line.
Stop.
And I love that. I love that about her because she understands theology and she understands God, and that's one of the many reasons why I'm attracted to her. So moving on. So the next verse, let's keep rolling. We're almost done. This is our last week in this series. It's been a great series. So moving on to verse 11 and 12. Things are going to get a little bit awkward. So the Bible, sometimes it just has awkward things. We don't want to skip it. We like to go through it and see why God has it in there. A lot of you guys know the Bible. If it was a movie, it would be rated X. Like, there is so much stuff in the Bible that's just crazy, between war things and sexual things. That's just very descriptive of how things happen. So we look at verse 11 and 12. This is following the disciples talking. And the disciples just say, hey, maybe we should stay single. Jesus replies with this in verse 11 in chapter 19. Not everyone can accept this word, but only those to whom it has been given. Then verse 12, this is where the things get really weird. Jesus says in verse 12, "For there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept this should accept it." So just to clarify, a eunuch is a guy who has had his testicles removed, either by himself, by his parents when he was young, or later in life someone did this. So let me just explain why. Before we get too lost in this.
Try not to laugh. It's just because I'm eating sauerkraut. It's really sour.
Yeah, it's a weird combination too. But why would Jesus mention this? Like, why are eunuchs, why is this even brought up in the Bible? Today, in our culture, it's so common, this whole thing with sexual identity and gender dysphoria, all these different things. And if you walk the halls of McMinnville High School, you can see what's going on with this gender confusion. So why does Jesus talk about a eunuch? So he's saying, hey, these guys, they're in the way they are. So a eunuch was made the way they are so that they could be a guard for like the quarters of royalties, for like a woman's dorm. These guys could be the guards, but then they wouldn't have maybe sexual desires to do bad things to these ladies. So there'd be these tough guys that had limitations, but they could still protect and they can rule and be of big help in royalty. And so I'm thinking, why is Jesus bringing this up? This whole thing with eunuchs. And I like how he walks through the different descriptions of this, but he's taking this in the context of the singleness or singlehood. It can be for people because people have different medical situations. People have different things that have happened to them in life. Not everyone is called to marriage. Mm-hmm. And so this whole thing, we can get in the weeds with this whole thing with sexual identity. Obviously, we are who God has designed us to be. So we are not who we think or we feel we are. No matter how I feel, I'm always Mark the man. And so these guys were in a weird situation, but Jesus is giving this reminder. It's like, hey, you know what? These guys could be called to a gift of being single. So guys have desires for guys, girls have desires for girls. It doesn't mean they have to pursue those desires, okay? So they can just abstain from those things and just focus on being single and not even worry about getting married. We see more of this in Acts chapter 8. If you want to read one of the weirdest chapters in the Bible, read from Acts chapter 8. So one of the first converts to Christianity is a eunuch. The story about Philip, he's preaching about Jesus. He finds this eunuch. This eunuch's trying to read from a scroll from Isaiah, and he needs help interpreting. And Philip talks about who the Messiah, who Jesus is. And this eunuch becomes a Christ follower. So it's so cool to see how God uses these people that might be confused in who they are and their identity. He's like, hey, you are going to be one of the examples of the first people to forward the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you have a friend who is gay, if you have someone who's wrestling with sexual identity, first of all, these people need love like anybody else on the planet Earth. I know we lived in Chicago for a year. We lived in, a lot of you guys know the story, we lived in a male homosexual community. I know it sounds weird, but we did. We lived in a community, it was cheap rent. We didn't know anything about rainbow flags. And we went there. And we lived there, and so I had conversations with gay men and getting to know this culture, and it opened my eyes. Just these people are obviously like us. They just need love. They need so much attention like anybody, and it's our duty as Christ followers to love them and to get to know them. So in the Bible, anytime a eunuch has nothing to do with homosexuality, but a lot of times this comes up as we read through things like this. Anytime you see the word homosexuality in the scriptures, it means the action. It's not talking about the person. And so the Bible is very clear that homosexuality, the action, is not of God, but a homosexual is still a creation of God. And that's a person that God loves so much. So God is very clear that any desires that we just have, we should not just act on them. Because I have desires that I have, it doesn't mean that I have it. Therefore, it's a good thing if I pursue it, because it might make me happy, because it doesn't matter. This is not about our happiness. The point of marriage is not happiness. It's about holiness. It's that triangle, pursuing God on the top, and we get closer together in our relationship as we pursue Him more. The main point of this series, especially now in this whole thing called The One, we just want to give you some tips, because a lot of times you have so many lonely friends that you know. Maybe if you are lonely in life, if you just feel like, man, there's just no one that cares. You feel like you're off on this own island and no one really notices you. If you feel like you're invisible when you walk into a room. I know when I was in middle school, I felt invisible. I was so shy in middle school. I would just be in the back of the room with my head down, like I didn't want to say a word. I don't want to draw attention to myself. And I was very lonely, in middle school and in high school too. So if you feel that, we love you. This is why our leaders are here. They want to talk with you. They want to pray with you. We just want to give you some tips for people that that are lonely, or if you are lonely. We just want to give you some tips on how you can actually just not feel lonely and actually understand that you are loved.
So one of those things is to invite your friends to your home group. Our home group, we hope, is a place that you guys feel safe, a place you guys feel like you can build friendships. Hopefully it's not a cliquey place, where there's one group here, one group there, but it's just one group, your home group. So invite your friends to that. Come on Sundays. Make that a priority in your life. And just think of your friends at school. Think of people at school. Notice them. Notice when people are alone and talk to them. Invite them. But yeah, basically, most important thing is just to talk to them, include them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's such a good reminder to invite people. You guys, a lot of you have so many friends that are just waiting for an invitation for these things, and how dare we not invite them? Mm-hmm. You guys, the first thing that God said was not good in the whole story of the Bible was that man was alone. And so God saw that he created man. He's like, oh, okay, this is not good that man is alone. So he gave him a companion. And that was his wife. And obviously, if God doesn't want you to be married, he still wants you to have a relationship, because he's a relational God. He loves this fellowship that we can have. And we shouldn't stay away from that. We should actually embrace it.
He's a triangle God, right? The Trinity.
That's right.
So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah.
God in himself is relationship. And we are made in his image. And so we are made for relationship. Yeah.
That's good. You guys, the one. That's it from this series. You guys enjoy your talks in your small groups. And have an amazing spring break next week. We see you the week after back in the Foundry.
Ciao, ciao.